Jaden Rashada is looking for another home. There's a part of me that feels incredibly sorry for this young man, as Florida just hijacked his recruiting and ran it straight into the ground. It's told him they had money for him, and he shows up to Florida, and there's no money for him. Jaden Rashada, where might he end up, Caleb?
Yeah, so this is shocking because he transferred out of Georgia, and I think you and I both would have thought with Carson Beck probably leaving, I think there was a chance he could have beaten Gunnar Stockton for the starting job next year.
It's not a chance. I think it would have likely happened unless he was told otherwise.
That's the question. And so now we start to ask, why did he hit the portal? And I don't know where he's going to end up at this point, because he left Arizona State because I think he thought the minute he got a little bit of taste of starting, I think that there were a lot of teams that fell in love with him. I think there is a lot of, in this era of the portal, quarterbacks more than any other position, you're seeing a lot of hopping around to try to find a place to start and to try to find the best place to start. I don't know if you saw Harrison Bailey, who was a former Tennessee quarterback, who was the MVP of Louisville's bowl game, transferred right after Louisville won.
Wow.
Pretty much. And he was a starter. I think, and Dave, you tell me if this is right. There's three possibilities here, and I don't know which one. And it's with Rashada and it's with Bailey. Possibility number one, for instance, Bailey played well. Somebody else offered more NIL money. That's the simplest explanation, right? Occam's razor.
Sure.
Possibility number two, they just don't think they're going to get a chance to play at the place they're at. That could be Rashada at Georgia, even though I think he would beat out Gunnar Stockton. So I have a hard time believing that. Harrison Bailey, I don't believe that because he started the bowl game. He was probably going to be the starter going into his final year of eligibility. Option number three, even though they could start at the place they're at, there's another school that's offered them a role that they think they're a better fit for and they think will be better for them, and they're going to take a risk going to that school. I can't imagine either of them doing that. Can you?
No, but as far as a better opportunity, what year is Gunnar Stockton?
Gunnar Stockton, I believe, is going to be a sophomore going into this year.
Okay, if I'm Jaden Rashada, okay, I'm a 50-year-old man. I tend to make more prudent decisions, Caleb, than a 19-year-old. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. If I'm a 19-year-old and I show up to Georgia and they've offered me cash, probably Carson Beck gave me a Lambo, and this is my home, and I want to play in the SEC, and was he Arizona State?
Arizona State.
Okay, I'm at Arizona State, and that just wasn't the same level of football facilities, the whole thing. I want to be back in the SEC. And then I go through camp. I go through the season, and I'm obviously more talented than Gunnar Stockton. And then he starts. I think that might have slammed the door on Jaden Rashada. And I say good for Kirby Smart. I mean, if he did that, I mean, you can't – you're in a championship type of run. You can't play a guy – even if you think that Jaden Rashada is 40% of Gunnar Stockton, right? Okay, let's just say one's 60%, one's 40%. You can't chance a championship run. So if he had to stand up to Jaden Rashada and said, buddy, you got to hit the bricks because I'm going with Gunnar, gives us the best chance to win – too bad. I think this illustrates the difference between Tennessee's football program right now and why people are a little bit, I believe, overly negative. Tennessee's football program is set at quarterback until Caleb's son goes to school one day. And I think that's step number one in this NIL thing. If you don't have your quarterback situation locked up, and they've got that with McIntyre, they've got that with Faison Brandon. And listen, if one of those guys, if McIntyre sees Nico next year and he balls out, and Nico says, I love college so much I want to come back, and McIntyre bolts, will you have Faison? I don't see other schools with a game plan at quarterback like Tennessee has. And maybe they've been fortunate and things have fallen in the right position. But Caleb, I think that's reason to celebrate Tennessee's football program that maybe some people take for granted?
I think this is something I want to say up front. I just talked about people panicking over Tennessee in the portal earlier in the show. I think people need to stop panicking over the state of college football with NIL in the portal as it is, based on what you're saying. It's working. It's actually working. More people are getting opportunities going to other places as of right now. I think what's separating are the teams that run it more effectively. And as you're pointing out, Tennessee is handling everything much more effectively right now. And I think the important point to bring up is that if you look at the data, nobody's losing more than like a quarter of their team. So everybody's like, oh, there's no loyalty to these teams. I can't root for players over 4 years. Yada, yada, yada. Whine, whine, whine. I just want to whine about college football. Guys, 75% of your team is coming back every single year, okay? In all college football programs. That's still a good ratio. And most schools that are losing players at Tennessee's level are losing players that they probably weren't going to play. The portal and the NIL are working.
For Tennessee specifically, you don't just
for Tennessee specifically, not for everybody, but it's going to start working for everybody because everybody's going to figure out how to navigate and operate this thing. Tennessee got ahead of the curve on this. Okay, now I do think there is going to be some issues down the road for Tennessee because I think the whole SEC is going to have issues down the road until the salary cap's in place because Big Ten schools are starting this year going to be raking in so much more money that they're going to be able to buy more talent.
Okay,
but
let me ask you this, though. While Tennessee seems to be on the good side of it, I think we would agree that Florida is not because of the way they handled the Rashada. I mean, that's like...
Yeah, but they're recruiting out the wazoo right now.
Well, I know, but you could have a wedding ring without a diamond, and it's just... That to me is like one big black mark that you have a kid show up and the money's not there and he's the quarterback. I mean, that's really tough for me to overcome. They are recruiting well. And then, so Billy Napier's kind of an old school coach, not very bright. I think that, just to be real honest with you, I don't think he's going to master the transfer portal suddenly. Now, they might recruit at a high level out of high school. My question is, I'm not worried about Florida. I think if there's a kid in Valdosta halfway in between and Tennessee wants bad enough in the transfer portal, they can go get him and beat Florida for them. Would you agree with that?
Probably.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
All things being equal. I'm not saying like it's Danny Werfel's son, but what about Georgia? Does Tennessee have an NIL advantage over Georgia?
Oh, I think they have an NIL advantage over Georgia, but I think the NIL advantage is nullified because I think Georgia, there is a discount to go play at Georgia right now. Here's the big trouble with Tennessee, by the way. This is one big concern, Dave.
Okay, don't let me forget because I don't think those exist based off people I've spoken to. But go ahead.
You don't think discounts exist? Because I thought there was a hype.
Right. I think if Nick Saban was still around, I think the discounts of playing for Saban because he's going to get you to the NFL, I think those days are over.
See, I thought the Hypo discount was there last year, and I don't think it's there this year. I guess that's where I'm at with it.
Ooh, I don't know. I don't know that a lot of guys took a discount last year. I think a lot of guys were paid, and I think that's why that they're going to pull back on some of the spending, or at least from what I've been told, hold it right where it is.
Which
is the same thing because inflation, right? Inflation's 4%. So
yeah, if you hold it where it is, and you're going to,
if I tell you I'm paying you $100 a year right now, and you make $100 a year in 10 years, then you've actually gotten a pay cut.
Right? No, I totally agree. It was
having before long between me and Caleb. But go ahead.
The point you're making is money devalues over time. Money devalues over time.
So I think that Tennessee's going to, I think they're going to put a little bit of a cap themselves on the spending. I don't think they're going to go and slash the budget. I think some people got a little bit confused by that when I reported that last year. I'm not saying they're going to slash the budget, but I think putting a limit on spending is probably the right thing to do, Caleb, because when you hire a new coach, you do what? You give them free reign. Do you need a private plane to recruit somebody in St. Martin in the West Indies? Go for it. I mean, you don't put any limitations when you hire a new coach, but now is probably a prudent time to put some reins on some things.
Yes, this is where it's going to work itself out. The reins is going to be, and there will be a school that figures this out, man, the Moneyball reins. Why spend money on the coach when I can spend money on the players? And I can just get a mascot like Ed Orgeron as a head coach, and he'll go win a national championship because I'll have so much talent on my team that I'll ball. That's coming.
Okay. Let me play devil's advocate, because you're still going to have to get 2 coordinators. That's what Orgeron did. Orgeron had 2 excellent coordinators. I was told before the season he's never going to turn it over to them, but if he does, they're really, really good. And I was told that they're probably going to lose 3 games because he won't turn it over to them, but he did. So my question is, how can an Orgeron work if you're going to spend $2.53 million per coordinator? Well, you might as well get a bright head coach. That's why I think Tennessee is in a fine position, because I think Josh Hypo is a very bright offensive mind. And I don't think bright offensive mind is putting together that offense of 2022 that threw it all over the park. I think a bright offensive mind is being able to adjust to 12 personnel and do that to win football games like he did. I'm more impressed. This sounds crazy. I'm more impressed by Josh Heupel's coaching X's and O's after the 2024 season than I am 2022.
Oh, I'm not.
I think I might be in the minority there.
I think we saw too many examples of him coming up and like, oh, they threw something at us that we weren't ready for, that we hadn't seen on film. I'm like, how many times are you going to say that, bro? Like, how many times are you not going to adjust in a game? Okay. And I think that's kind of like what's throwing me off. It's like the teams were in that 3-3-5 the whole time. And also, I'm sorry, that Ohio State game, Dylan Sampson getting hurt, they abandoned the run game like that, Dave. I mean, they barely ran the football against Ohio State. And I'm sorry, I don't care if it's Peyton Lewis. You stick with the run game. Heupel's bread and butter, and people don't get this. He keeps it on the ground. He wants to run it twice as many times. He wants to run it, and this is the truth. He wants to run it 3 out of every 5 plays. That's how often he wants to run it. He wants to run it 3 out of every 5 plays. And he did not do that against Ohio State, all because his star running back got hurt, even though Peyton Lewis was supposed to be an elite running back himself. I mean, all this boils down to, because we're getting sidetracked a little bit, are the players should you spend more money on the players or the coaches in the NIL era? And I'm going to argue the players.